9:25 de la mañana. Continuamos en esta edición de Business Connection aquí en Negocios Televisión, mirando a los mercados, a la inversión a medio y largo plazo y al análisis. Y para ello recibimos a esta hora a Michael Lewis, Head ESG Research de DWS. Michael, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us in Negocios Televisión. What does EU transformation consist of?
Well, it's a radical journey that we've got ahead, and I'd say it's really about revamping Europe to be fit for the future. I think what's happened with COVID and Putin's war is we've suddenly realized the incredible vulnerabilities of Europe, not just for our dependencies on medical equipment from Asia, but also natural gas from Russia. And we need to really resolve and secure much safer supply chains, which we're going to be talking more about lithium and cobalt, because these are going to be critical commodities for the climate transition. But it's also about really addressing very poor demographics. It's also about weak industrial competitiveness. It's also decarbonisation. And Europe's done a really good job, actually, at decarbonising. It's reduced its greenhouse gas emissions by about a third over the last 30 years. That compares to about 7% in the United States. So we're a pretty good leader in this area, but we need to really ramp it up and accelerate, because the targets that we've got ahead of us are very, very ambitious. So those are sort of the reasons why we need to do it. And I think maybe also we've got to look at the transformation is also about financing it. How do we actually pay for it? How do we get the investment to flow to those areas that need to be transformed? And so we need to revamp that as well. We don't rely on capital markets as much as we should do, particularly with the financial crisis, the euro sovereign debt crisis. Bank loans are a vulnerability. Banks are not lending as much. They're a bit risk averse. We've got higher lending conditions now. So I think this is another area of transformation. So we see really interesting and exciting opportunities in direct lending and these ways of actually fueling and financing the transformation. So it's a number of different pillars that we're looking at as to what it all means.
What are the main focus areas that need investment?
Well, I think we're looking really at three fundamental sectors, and that is real estate, transportation, and energy. And that's where all this investment needs to go. Well, a large portion of it. These are incredibly high emitting sectors. If you ask somebody today, which is the only sector that has not decarbonized and reduced its greenhouse gas emissions, there's only one sector that hasn't decarbonized, and that's road transportation. So this is a big area. So we need to electrify our roads. We need to get more charging infrastructure. Also, the buildings that we work and live in, these need to be much more energy efficient. And that would have really great benefits in terms of reducing our demand for fossil fuels, so improving our energy security. It also reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also if we're doing these kind of investments in energy efficiency, what tends to happen, your real estate buildings actually become more valuable, so your valuations go up. Also, particularly in residential buildings, your mortgage default risk tends to go down. So there are so many benefits, and also there are very strong employment benefits as well from this type of investment. So these are the sort of the main areas. And I'd also say we want to also focus on small and medium-sized enterprises. These are really the backbone of the European economy. They are about half of the economic output of our continent, and they are about 60% of greenhouse gas emissions, and they employ about 2 out of 3 people. So we not only need to look at the sectors, but we also need to look at the actors that we want to transform as well. So those are the sort of things that we're looking at.
How are you going to get that investment?
Well, the numbers are pretty staggering. I think for just the climate transition, we need about 470 billion euros every year. And we're going to need it from the public sector, but also the private sector. So a lot of this does fall on the private sector. One of the problems is, how do we bring the private sector in? How do we unlock that capital? So I think there's going to be a lot of range of investment solutions. People are looking at how the public and private sector can work together in terms of blended finance. I think typically what we're saying is that to get transformational investments, which is investments that have impact and they have outcomes, we're going to look at private markets. This is where currently the most attractive opportunities are. So this is typically in the alternatives asset classes. This is infrastructure, real estate, energy efficiency. As I say, this is in, where we want to see this investment is going into the sort of the real estate, commercial and residential real estate, also looking at the power generating sector. Wind power, we think, is going to be a really exciting area as well. But I think we also need to look at financing structures and tax incentives to fast-track capital into these types of investments. And the US has done a pretty good job of actually introducing quite efficient tax structures. There was actually, at the end of last year, one asset manager working with a US semiconductor company and looking at the financing for that company to actually expand. I think we need to see how asset managers can play much more of a role in helping these investments flow, but we also need to look at how governments and the European policymakers can also introduce tax-efficient structures that exist, say, in the United States and bring them over here. So I think we can learn a lot from lessons that are being deployed in other parts of the world.
And how do you strike the balance between contributing to the transformation of Europe and obtaining a financial return?
Well, this is the the interesting thing with this is that there are more and more investors out there that are looking not just at return, but they're looking at impact as well. And I think it really does depend a lot on the different asset classes that we are examining. So there will obviously be quite a lot of well-established businesses with pretty reliable cash flows. These can have, can enjoy quite a lot of financing. I don't think they'll have much trouble getting that financing, and they can offer quite attractive market returns. I think the problem will be where we've got innovative companies or projects which actually are cash flow negative. And these include there are much more development risks in these projects. These are, the time to maturity takes a bit longer. And so these, I think, will be the actors which we really need to help to actually finance and also introduce venture capital. Venture capital, unlike the United States, venture capital is a very small part of the European financing area. I think it's only about 0.1% of European GDP is mobilizes venture capital. So I think there is a lot to do. It does mean that we will probably see, as I say, blended finance solutions will help where we have a return or where the risk is possibly perceived as too high and the return slightly too low. So those are those innovative projects, the startups, and where we will probably need to see blended finance where the public sector comes in to support that type of investment. DWS propose solutions through real estate, infra, private credit, and sustainable investment. Do you already have products in your portfolio, or are you in the process of launching them? Do you have products for retail investors, or will they be only for institutional investors? No, there are a range of investors. As I say, this has been a project that was launched last year, and we will always be adding to the products that we have. So at the moment, we've got sustainable infrastructure debt investments. We've also got energy efficiency projects. We've also got an infrastructure equity product as well. There will be next generation real estate equity strategy. So the list kind of goes on, and it will be added to. I think so far, naturally, our home base is in Germany. So in terms of retail clients, what we have is a European infrastructure fund that focused on retail. So I think it is a broad range, but it will be added to. And as I say, so far it is confined to listed alternatives, but naturally we will be expanding that out over time.
So, Michael Lewis, Head ESG Research de DWS. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for this time. Good day and good business.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Y nosotros en este punto, para avanzar